Hi, I'm Yanjun. I'm glad to introduce my paper, Tableaux for the Logic of Statically Knowing How. I'm sorry I cannot do this personally on the conference because my visa is delayed. I have not received my visa to UK up to now. So I will present it by video. First, I will briefly introduce the logic of statically knowing how. Secondly, I will detailedly introduce the Tableau rules for this logic. And in the final part, I will give a brief conclusion. We know that epistemic logic is a logic for reasoning about knowledge. The knowledge formalized by epistemic logic is also called knowledge that, because the knowledge is expressed in language as knowing that. Besides the knowledge that, there is another kind of knowledge which is called knowledge how. Knowledge how is the knowledge expressed as knowing how, such as I know how to go to London. I know how to swim, and so on. In this paper, a logic is proposed to capture the reasoning about goal-direct knowing how, and is called the logic of statically knowing how. Next, I will briefly introduce this logic. If you want to know more about this logic, you can read this paper. The language of this logic is a model language. It has two kinds of modalities, the know-that modality and the know-how modality. The KI phi means the agent knows that phi, and the KH phi means the agent knows how to achieve the goal that's phi. The model of this logic is an epistemic transition system, which is also an extension of the standard epistemic model. So it has a domain and equivalence relation and valuation. So this three parts is a standard epistemic model. Besides the epistemic model, it also has some information about actions. And the set AI is the set of actions that the agent I can do. And for each action I, QA is the action relation. Before moving on, we first say something about the notations we are going to use. The equivalence clause of S is also called the belief state of the agent I in S, and the set of all belief states is the set of all equivalence clauses. And we say two belief states are accessible by the action relation if and only if there are two states S prime and T prime such that these two states are accessible by the action relation. For the semantics, the know-that semantics is the same as the epistemic logic. That means if know-that phi is true in S, if and only if for each state in the belief state of S, then phi is true on the state. Know-how phi is true on the state S if and only if the agent I has a strategy sigma such that all complete sigma executions are finite, and for each termination belief state T, know-that phi is true on the state T. Then what's a strategy? A strategy is a partial function from the set of all belief states to the set of actions, such that the corresponding action is executable on each state in the belief state. So intuitively, a strategy is a partial function that tells the agent do what actions on what belief states. An execution of a strategy is a possibly infinite sequence of belief states, such that for each two neighbored belief states, they are accessible by the corresponding actions. And we see an execution of a strategy sigma is complete if it is infinite or the end belief state is not in the domain of the strategy. And we use this notation to denote the termination belief states of all complete sigma executions beginning from the belief state S. So here is an example. This model represents the situation that an agent how to turn the lights off. So firstly, the agent cannot distinguish the two states S and U, and in the state S, the light is off, and on the state U, the light is on. But on each state, he can do the action observe. Then after doing the action observe, he can distinguish these two states. Then on the states T and V, he can do the action flip, and doing the action flip will lead to the opposite states. We can check that in this model, the agent knows how to turn the lights off. This formula is true in the state S because in this situation, the agent have a strategy. In the belief state X, in the belief state of S, the agent can do the action observe, and on the belief state of V, the agent can do the action flip. So this is all the complete executions of the strategy sigma. We can see that all the complete executions will terminate on the belief state T, and on the state T, the light is off is true. So this is the language, the model, and the semantics of this logic. And also there are some important valid formulas for this logic. The first is, if no that phi, then no how phi, because in this situation, doing nothing, do the empty strategy will be guaranteed the result phi. Second is, if no how phi, then no how no that phi. Next is, if no how phi, then no that no how phi. So this is the full axiom of the no how formula, because in epistemic logic we know the full axiom says, if no phi, then we know phi. So this is a corresponding version of the know how. If we know how phi, then we know that we know how phi. And the next is the 5 axiom of know how formula. If we don't know how phi, then we know that we don't know how phi. And the last one is, if we know how phi, then we know how phi. It's also called the composition axiom, because this axiom, this formula means the agent can compose two subsequent strategy to be one strategy. So there are some related results, and we are not going into it. And the main result for this paper is we show that the set problem of this logic is in P space. Okay, now we are going to see the Tableau rules for this logic, and the Tableau system in this paper is developed from the Tableau system presented in the paper by Helber and Moses. A tableau for this logic is a labeled formula and is labeled and/or tree. It is a tree but with a labeled function. This label I function L label each node n with a set of formulas and label each edge with either an agent or an action. Intuitively, if nodes in this tree represents a node in models, and if the formula phi is labeled on the node, that means we're trying to make phi is true on this state. And if the edge n prime is labeled with the action is labeled with the agent, that means there is an epistemic relation between these two states. And if the edge is labeled with an action, that means there is an action relation between this edge. Okay, firstly, a naive procedure for constructing the tableau for a formula is given. So how do we construct the tableau for formula? The procedure is first we construct the root nodes and label the root with the formula. The second step is we extend the tree with the Tableau rules, and we will introduce the Tableau rules follows. But before that, we first see some notations. There are three cancel terms for the Tableau rules. The pair n phi means phi is labeled on the node n, and the triple I n prime means the edge n prime is labeled with the agent I, and the triple A n prime means the edge n prime is labeled with the action A. So first we have the Tableau rules for Boolean formulas, Boolean operators. These are normal, and also to deal with the no-that modalities, we need to require that the formulas labeled on nodes need to be a subformula closure. So to get this subformula closure property, we need these rules. Please note the rules for know-how. For the cut know-how rules, we break know-how formula down to know-that formula or not. And for the cut negation know-how rules, it corresponds to the valid formula know-that phi implies know-how phi. So then we have the Tableau rules to deal with the know-that modality K. Firstly, we know that the know-that modality is a standard box modality in model logic. So we have these two rules to capture the box properties of the know-that modality. Besides the standard box properties, we know the know-that modality is an S5 modality. So we have these two rules, K4 and K5. These two rules correspond to the 4 axiom and 5 axiom of the know-that modality. These two rules will guarantee that in the fully expanded open Tableau, if know-that phi is labeled on the state n, then for each state in the belief state of n, then know-that phi will be labeled on that state. Okay, now we are moving to the rules for the know-how formula. So before going on, we recall the semantics for know-how formula. If know-how phi is true in S, if and only if the agent I has a strategy sigma such that all complete sigma executions are finite, and For each termination belief state T, know that phi is true on T. Please note that for strategies, the corresponding action sigma s is required to be executable on all states in the belief state of S. So for the term n know-how phi, by the catch rule, we know that there are two situations. For the first situation, know that phi is labeled on the node n, which means know that phi is true on n. In this situation, then the empty strategy will be a good strategy. So we will have know-how phi is true on n. So in this situation, we need not to build a new strategy to guarantee phi, because know that phi is already true on the state n. For the second situation, if know that phi is not true on the node n, it means to guarantee know-how phi is true on the state n, we need to build a new strategy, because the empty strategy now is not a good strategy. So we need to construct a new strategy. Our method is to make action A. The purpose of this action is going to realize the formula know-how phi. So if we need to make sure know-how phi is true on n, but at the same time know that phi is not true on n, then we will add a new node n prime, and this new node n prime is accessible from n by the action A know-how phi. So in other words, the action A know-how phi are going to realize the know-how phi on n. But only this is not sufficient for know-how phi is true on n, because as a strategy, the action A know-how phi needs to be executable on each state in the belief state of n. So to make sure this, we will use the 4 and 5 axiom for know-how formula, because as in the know that formula K, we know that the 4 and 5 axiom will make sure that if the know that formula is labeled on one state in the belief state, then it will be labeled on all states in the belief state. So to make sure each state in the belief state of n has a know-how phi successor, we will use these two rules, the 4 and 5 axiom for know-how formula. So with these two rules, in summary, with these two rules, we will make sure for each node in the belief state will be labeled on the know-how formula. And with these rules, we will make sure each node, if labeled with the know-how phi, then it will have a know-how phi successor n prime to guarantee phi. And it can be checked with these rules that this will be a good strategy for n satisfy know-how phi. Then we are going to deal with the negation know-how modality. Firstly, let's see a key observation. If know-how phi is not true on the state S, if and only if, firstly, know that phi is not true on S. This condition means the empty strategy will not be a strategy for know-how phi in S. And the second condition says, each strategy more than one step will also not be a good strategy for know-how phi is true on S. That is, for each action A that is executable on all states in S in the belief state of S, there must exist some successor T such that know-how phi is not true on the successor T. So this condition will guarantee that each strategy more than one step will not be a good strategy for know-how phi true on S. That's because if A is executable on all states in S, in the belief state S, and if know-how phi is true on everywhere, on every successor, that means S will have a good strategy to guarantee know-how phi, because he can do the action A. So this means the know-how phi will be true on the state S. And we already see that the know-how phi implies know-how phi is a true formula, is a valid formula. So this means know-how phi will also be true on the state S. So this means if know-how phi is not true on S, then know-how phi is also not true on S. So that means for each action A, if A is executable in all states in the belief state of S, then there must exist a successor T such that know-how phi is not true on T. So to guarantee know-how phi is not true on the state S, we only need to guarantee these two conditions. So for the first condition, it can be guaranteed by the cut rule, the cut negation know-how rule, because for the cut negation know-how, we already have the not know that phi will be labeled on N. So this means the empty strategy will not be a good strategy. And secondly, we need to also make sure that for each action A, if A is executable on all states in the belief state of N, then there must exist some successor N prime such that know-how phi is not true on the successor N prime. So the key problem is what kinds of action will be executable on all states in the belief state of N. The answer is only the actions generated by this rule will be executable on all states in the belief state. So to guarantee this second condition, we will need only care about the actions generated by this rule. So the Tableaux rules for the negation know-how will look like this. So to guarantee that know-how phi is true on N, we only need to guarantee the action A know-how psi, because this action will be only generated by these two terms. So if these two terms occurs together with the negation know-how phi, we will generate a new successor N prime, and on this successor, the not know-how phi is true. Also, at the same time, because the N prime is the successor of N reached by this action, so at the same time, to guarantee the know-how psi will be not broken, so we also need to know that psi will be true on the successor N prime. And it can be checked that with this rule, the second condition will be satisfied. Okay. Up to now, we have introduced all the Tableaux rules for this logic. but there is still one key default for these naive Tableau procedures. The main problem is that this Tableau procedure might not terminate. It might go on and on without termination. The reason is these two situations. Because for the key 4 and key 5 rules, we know that each I successors n prime will inherit the no-that formula and the negation no-that formula. And for the negation no-how rules, we know that for each action successor n prime, it will inherit the negation no-how formulas. This means the formulas labeled on the successors might have the same length with the formulas labeled on the predecessors. This means the length of the formulas labeled on the nodes might not be shorter and shorter. This means the procedure might go on and on without a stop. And the solution is also given in the paper by Help and Moss. The solution is the new successors will be generated only when there is no predecessors, which is labeled with the same formulas. Okay, and we have in this paper we show the completeness and the soundness of this Tableau system. And we also show that there is a polynomial space algorithm for deciding whether the Tableau formula is closed. This means the upper bound for the set problem of this logic is in P space. And because the multi-agent, the set problem of the multi-agent epistemic logic is already P-space hard, and epistemic logic is a fragment of this logic. So together with the upper bound we have shown in this paper, it means that the set problem of the multi-agent logic or strategy knowing how is P-space complete. So, in this paper, we first give a Tableau system for the logic of strategically knowing how, and we show its soundness and completeness, and we also give a Tableau system, and based on this Tableau system, a P-space procedure is given for this logic. That's all. Thank you very much.